Hi y'all, so I just want to make a quick video about that time when a man failed his political party. How the Conservatives in Britain got their worst result in over 50 years. Okay, now, uh, background. This is also taking place, this was the election of 1997 when, I don't know his name, I don't remember his name, but when the Conservative leader after Thatcher lost so bad to Tony Blair. So, yeah, background, the decade of Thatcher. Like, literally the 80s, it was the decade of Thatcher in Britain. Margaret dominated the 1980s in the United Kingdom, having tremendous effect on everyday citizens. She really did. Again, whether you agree with what she did or you don't, everyone can agree that she had a tremendous effect, at least for the time being. And even now, people have learned from, her policies. She delivered the Conservatives their largest majorities for their party history. No, in their party's history for 3 consecutive elections. She cracked down on trade unions, lowered direct taxes, won the Falkland War, pushed for climate protections. I believe she pushed for climate protections. I believe she, believed in climate change and stuff. So that's ahead of the time for the Conservatives. And deregulated many industries. But also, unemployment soared, inflation rose during the late 1980s. Steep decline in economic growth between 88 and 90. Now, the Iron Lady's successor. A vote was held to oust Miss Thatcher as the leader of the Conservative Party in 1990, when she won a majority of the vote. Miss Thatcher resigned as leader after the first round, and John Major won 49.7% on the second round of voting. So this guy took over as her successor, as the Iron Lady of Britain. Yeah, let's just say he did not do nearly as well as she did, or nearly as impactful as she did. But anyways, John Major was sworn in at a time when the Conservatives had just recovered from being losing by double digits to Labour in polls. Mr. Major had inherited an economic recession, and his first term proceeded over extremely low economic growth, double-digit inflation, and interest rates, despite the Conservatives managed to hold a narrow lead in polling and got a 10-seat majority in the 1992 election, which, by the way, that was like a 50 or so seat loss. Like, that was a lot. They lost a lot for the Conservatives in 1992. Major's second term was mainly recovering from the economic recession, while also having bitter internal party fights over the future of the Conservative Party. Also, it didn't look good on the pound sterling. Had crashed after a major investment. It failed, and interest rates were changed 4 times in one day. The British government had to take the pound sterling out from the European exchange rate mechanism after the Conservatives have been pushing hard to stay in the group. Now, also something to note, yes, Thatcher's policies probably did have an impact on the recession that happened in 1990, but I do believe that by 1990, the world was going through a recession, but because of the big growth of the 80s comes recession at the turn of the 90s. In 1997, and Tony Blair's rebranding. Basically, it's a rebranding of the Labour Party. But Tony Blair came to be the Labour Party leader in 1995 and quickly rebranded and modernized the party with the title of New Labour, which was mainly a neoliberal manifesto. It talked about expanding the welfare state, support for trade unions and workers' protections, free trade, etc. During the 1997 election campaign, Tony Blair had high preferred prime minister, polling, by the way, and campaigned on being more economically stability, on basically stabilizing and having more of an economic stability if he was prime minister, without depriving people of their social services. The campaign season had Labour up by double digits in every poll, and thus, after all of the votes were counted on election day, the Labour Party gained 145 seats and the Conservative lost 171. Thus, this was the best result for Labour ever, and the worst result for the Conservatives since 1945. And they only had a worse result in 1996. Like the worst result, I believe, was in 1906. 91. Oh yeah, and they only had a worse result in 1906, 91 years previous. Which is to say, John Major really just, I don't imagine he was not a good prime minister for Britain. Now Tony Blair, he has his faults, he did his thing. I'm not gonna, get my opinion on him, but this video is mainly just about how John Major really, which I understand, because you have huge shoes to fill when you're talking about the successor, like being the successor to Margaret Thatcher, a woman titled the Iron Chancellor, I think it's for Germany, the Iron Lady, after Margaret Thatcher had said. So when he came in and it was a recession and it was just really bad, and the interest rates kept changing and it was just bad. The economy was just bad. So they elected, and I believe throughout his second term he had recovered a lot, but not a lot, but he had stabilized the economy, which is I think why Tony Blair was able to be like, we're gonna do new heights, and we're gonna secure your own workers' benefit and stuff, and pensions and NHS funding, while also having economic growth, like stable economic growth. Yeah, that was my little video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.